The Buffalo Bills just got some fantastic news from the NFL regarding the salary cap for 2025, plus a nugget that could help them not only this year, but down the road as well. We cover it all here on the Bills Breakdown. My name is Harrison Graham from Chat Sports. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Subscribe to the channel because we cover all things Bills here on the Bills Breakdown, the latest news, rumors, draft, free agency coverage, trade buzz, everything else in between. We got it covered. Whatever Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane plan on doing this offseason, every news item out there, rumor item, we are going to hit it for you guys. Okay, Dan Graziato of ESPN with the scoop that the NFL let all teams know that the 2025 salary cap number will fall in the range of $277.5 to $281.5 million for this year, which of course is way up from $255.4 last year. The cap will have increased. How about this nugget? $53 million over the past 2 years. Business is booming in the NFL. Saw a note the other day that with the streaming numbers, 182 million people watch the NFL. So this sport is only getting more and more popular as time goes on. You see the year-by-year increases, other than the post-COVID year dip in 2021 due to fans not being in the stands for the most part. Massive increases for the most part year over year. Basically averaging 10, 12% increase. And stay tuned later in the video. That number could increase even more here a few years from now in terms of percentages. Now, the Bills going into kind of this offseason, we're sitting at projected negative $12 million in cap. Obviously, once the new league year starts, you have to be cap compliant. So, they'd have to cut guys, restructure deals, et cetera, et cetera. We'll get into some cut candidates in a minute. We, of course, have broken down different angles of that in terms of what they can do to become more cap healthy for this offseason. Now, Jason OTC of Over the Cap said that the salary cap increases beats all but one estimate that they had from teams in the league, helpful for teams like the Saints who are in major cap hell, but also the Bills who, have a little more flexibility than a team like New Orleans, but certainly are not flush with cap space at this point in time. Over the Cap had the projection at $272.5 million. Spotrac was at $275. Teams are operating between $265 and $275. So, like Jason said, other than I guess one team, this figure is coming in higher than expected, which is great news because it just gives teams more wiggle room. Maybe it's the difference in a team going after a big name free agent, or maybe it's the difference in the Bills trying to trade for a player where they didn't feel like they could earlier before. So now the new projected number is between negative 10, negative $5.5 million. So that gets you closer to being cap compliant. Maybe that's the difference in keeping one guy versus cutting him or something like that. Obviously helps. Every dollar helps. And the Bills, I think this is a critical offseason. I don't think this is one of those offseasons where they can kind of just roll with the current roster they had. Last year they had to make tough decisions to cut some guys because they were really in a tough cap spot, so they weren't able to add a ton of talent in free agency. I still think this year, whether it's in a trade or free agency, they need to add an impactful player or two, so they still need to make moves to make that possible. These three guys are certainly players that could be cut candidates. Von Miller, I think he's a prime one to clear out a lot of cap space if they want to do that. Matt Milano, probably more of a post-June 1 cut. Trubisky, someone that could get cut as well. But back to Milano, obviously a core player on this defense, but he's only played 9 games the past 2 years. He's dealt with numerous injuries. He'd probably be a post-June 1 cut just based on the savings. So you wouldn't get the cap savings right as free agency starts, but maybe that helps pay for your draft class or something like that. So these things all factor into play, and we'll see which tough decisions the Bills make in terms of who stays and who goes, and obviously who they tried to add to beef up this roster. Who should the Bills cut this offseason? If you had to drop a name in the comments, let me know. I think Von Miller's got to go. He's a fine role player, but he's paid to be a high-level starter. He is not that at this point in his career. Save a bunch of money, get cap compliant, and move on from him. Now, Brandon Beane said this back in January regarding their cap situation. He said, "We won't be in as big of a cap hole as we were last year. Now, we also had some numbers that were easier to move off of last year. I don't think we have as many of those options, but we're okay. We also have to remember we've got guys that are coming up on extensions. I don't expect this to be, as I said here a year ago, big spenders in free agency or anything like that." I still think they need to make at least one splash move. Now, obviously, look, when you have big contracts, when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen making a bunch of money, other players as well, you have to draft well. So that is something they have to continue to do. But when you're picking 30 and you feel like you're on the cusp of breaking through, I still think, especially the trade market is somewhere where they can improve because you can control those cap numbers a little easier, like a Myles Garrett, right? If they take him on, extend him, you can keep that cap hit number this year pretty low. So I would still consider Buffalo a strong player in those regards. But Beane obviously is making a valid point that, they're not going to be able to sign multiple guys making $20 million. Like maybe they got one big move up their sleeve, but that might be all they need to get over the hump in the AFC. Now, obviously, restructuring Josh Allen is something that is going to be able to save them a lot of money for this year, so look for them to do that. Deion Dawkins would be another restructure candidate, Dawson Knox as well. Typically, when you restructure guys, it's guys that you are 100% confident that are going to be a part of your team next year, because if you restructure someone, cutting them the following year becomes very difficult in terms of cap savings because you're pushing cap hit kind of larger numbers down the road. So if you restructure someone, you're kind of acknowledging, well, that player is going to be back the following year as well, unless they're just willing to take a bigger cap hit next year if they cut said player. If you restructure Josh Allen, it's $11 more million in cap. That probably gets you cap compliant with these new projections. In fact, it does. So I would expect that one to take place. Deion Dawkins is almost another $10 million. So I think that's an obvious play as well. And then Dawson Knox is $6 more million. So in theory there, you're what? Quick math, 11 plus 6 plus 9. Shout out producer Cullen. He's got the number, $26 million. So, again, based on the projections you currently have, just restructures alone would get you to probably about $15 to $18 million in cap space, depending on what the exact cap number comes in. If you cut a guy like Von Miller, that gets you closer to 30. Trubisky, like you could end up with 35, 40 million bucks pretty easily if the Bills do this thing right. So I think they'll be able to do that. Obviously, they got to figure out, okay, which couple of these free agents do we want to bring back? The good news is I look at this list, I'm not sure a single one of these guys outside of maybe Rasul Douglas is like a guy where I'm like, man, I'd really like to bring him back. Like, I like Matt Collins as a role player. If he's cheap, sure. Ty Johnson, cheap, sure. DeMar Hamlin, he's a third safety. If he doesn't have much of a market, sure. I'm letting Amari Cooper walk. That didn't work out that well. Dwayne Smoot's whatever at this point in his career. So that's the good news. Like last year, the Bills had to let go of some good players. This year, doesn't feel like, they're having to let guys walk that they just desperately would like to bring back like they did a year ago. So they're in a better situation from that standpoint with their roster construction. Who should the Bills re-sign this offseason? Out of all those players or whoever, who should the Bills re-sign in free agency? Go ahead and drop us a name or names in the comments below. Okay, I wanted to get to this before we got out of here as well. Brett Coleman, kind of a NFL YouTube OG, has done some work with the NFL as well. Went on a tweet thread, so we'll just kind of read some of this here. He said, the salary cap is going to explode again, and it's all because of the change in how Nielsen measures ratings. Starting this year, they're leaning into using data directly from smart TV manufacturers to measure viewing habits in addition to the traditional at-home panel method. This means NFL ratings in particular from Sunday Ticket on YouTube are going to be measured more accurately. And that number is going to be way bigger than you think because of just how many Gen Z and millennial consume football on streaming services. I am one of those. More accurate ratings means the league's next broadcast rights, which can be renegotiated in 2028, 2029, is going to be way more expensive, which ultimately means massive jumps in the salary cap. If I'm a GM, that means next year or even this year, I can sign some truly outrageously backloaded deals with a ton of funny money that all slams home in 2030 and not even care about the math. So you just think about what that could look like with those backloaded contracts. Like, let's say Buffalo does trade for a Micah Parsons or a Myles Garrett and gives them a new deal. Just backload the hell out of it. Give him a huge signing bonus up front so he's happy with the cash on hand and just have the cap hits be backloaded. Why? Because if Myles Garrett's cap hit in the final year of his deal in 2030, 2031 is 50, 55 million bucks even, well, if the cap is approaching $400 million, that's not that bad of a percentage, if we're being completely honest. So it gives you that flexibility in trades. It gives you ability to backload free agent contracts. Also, it's helpful the next time you extend Josh Allen or give him a pay raise, because that money is just going to keep exploding on the salary cap. So if you want to do that sooner rather than later with backloaded cap numbers, that is a benefit as well. So I think Brandon Beane, the Bills, have an opportunity here to be a little bit more aggressive than their negative $10 to $5 million in cap space would suggest, because there's just more flexibility coming from the NFL with the short term higher than expected cap room for this year, but also the long term of the ability on these new long term contracts to just backload them because of the expected TV deals down the road. And by the way, if you're the Bills, are you really worried about cap hits in 2030? Like, your window's right now. Like, you're trying to win immediately. So if I can get Myles Garrett and throw crazy money on the back end of that contract in terms of cap hits, I'm going to do it, because I'm trying to win a Super Bowl this year, next year, the year after that. I'm not worried about 5 or 6 years down the road. All right, that's going to do it for the Bills breakdown. Hopefully this was an informative video. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow with another episode, so we'll see you then.